Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would do another informative video for you guys because I have been doing a fourth video every day because of my training, but I'm only doing 3 training sessions a week, so it gives me a little more space. And, I've had a few people ask, hey Jason, when you talk about fake natties, you talk about Jerry Ward and these other people using the gear and then selling supplements and other stuff, aren't you a bit hypocritical? Aren't you a gear user? Right, that's a fantastic question. I'll be more than happy to answer that question. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Because you know what, guys, that is the direction I've gone with my channel. People ask me if I want to be as honest and frank as possible with no exaggerations and things. It's the direction I've really tried to go with this channel. That's why I lift with calibrated plates. That's why I've done DEXA scans, things like that, because we need accountability. So, do I feel that's hypocritical? No. But is it a good question? Yes. And would someone be justified if they personally felt it was hypocritical? Maybe. And I'll leave that up to you, but you guys probably need the facts there. Would I be considered a current gear abuser? No. Because what I use is prescribed by a doctor and it is a therapeutic amount. And I want to make that very, very clear. Like, in other words, if you were to go have the Olympic Drug Testing Committee test me right now, right, and they were to do blood work, urine, everything else, I would absolutely test positive for what I'm prescribed, which is testosterone cypionate. I would test positive for it, absolutely, in my urine. If my blood work were to be pulled, it would probably give me a T to E ratio that would be off. But my testosterone would be in the normal range though. Your reference range is going to be 300 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, right? I would actually test in the normal range. If you were to go and pull my blood today, pull my blood last week, pull my blood work a year ago from today, 2 years ago from today, it would have tested inside that reference range. And that's something that we need to be very, very clear on when I talk about that. I have been on a replacement dose for years, quite a few years at this point. So I haven't been running around blasting a bunch of gear using amounts that would push me above the normal range. I've pretty well stayed at my prescription. So I want some transparency there with some of that so that people understand that what I'm doing isn't outside of a medical environment. And I'm not doing what some people are calling TRT and taking 300, 400, 500 milligrams and crazy stuff like that. My prescription is 125 milligrams. All right, my testosterone levels test around 650 to 700 nanograms per deciliter, 300 to 1,000 being the reference range, right? I'm at least 300-ish below the top end of what's considered the natural range. Now, someone who's 900 or 1,000, that's very genetically elite in terms of producing testosterone, but I'm not at that level. So I want to make that clear to people so they don't think that's what's going on. No, I've not been using Tren or anything else. So I'm not blasting a bunch of gear. Does that give me an advantage over other guys in my age range who aren't on TRT? Yeah, because guys who are sitting at even 600 or 700 who are in their 40s, maybe 1 or 2% of guys in their 40s would still be there naturally. So that's an advantage, absolutely. Absolutely. But I am in the normal range. But do I consider that to be an advantage over, say, a guy my age he's declined a bit? He's below where he might have been 500 or 600 when he was younger. He's at 350 now or 300, right? Because that's pretty common, guys in my age bracket, even guys who work out. So do I have an advantage over him? Absolutely. If you were to compare me to that guy, would I say, oh, I'm natural, blah, blah? No, of course not. I don't classify that as natural. I don't, and I don't think it's reasonable too. So I want people to understand I don't claim natural. I don't claim natural, all right, because I have previously been a user. Now, as far as what we consider abuse amounts, that's really subject to debate. There's a lot of definitions of that. By some people's definitions, what I used to use could be considered abuse. But by modern standards, like even 2015 standards of what bodybuilders and athletes and people were using, I never used like what Jerry Ward, for example, admitted to. Like you guys saw what Jerry Ward's stack was. I would say the most aggressive I have ever done in my life was about half of what Jerry Ward admitted to at any given time. About half of that. So it's a little bit different of a comparison. But here's the thing. Does that give me a permanent advantage? Yes. Yes. Keep in mind, guys, some people will joke about, oh, Jason's not that big or whatever, you know, and they see me sitting here and stuff, but you guys saw my first DEXA scan. Saw my DEXA scan. For a guy at my height of only 5'9", right? That's my height. That's my medically determined height. That's in my medical records. For me to have 182 pounds of fat-free mass on that first DEXA scan, people need to understand that's extreme. That is extreme. For a 5'9" guy, remember how guys when what's his name? Ken O'Body had said he had like 172 or whatever, 174 pounds of fat-free mass, and he's like 5'11", right? He's a couple inches taller than me, supposedly. And for him to be holding something like 8 pounds less fat-free mass than me, he said was pretty much most people's natural limit. That's near the genetic threshold for most people, right? So put that in perspective. Me being at a slightly shorter height, which means less muscle mass, right? Less bone and less muscle potential because you're shorter, to still have 8 pounds of fat-free mass over him on the DEXA scan, my previous gear use has given me an advantage. All right, there are studies on this that show that there are long-term changes. So it's what I tell people, once you cash in your natty card, you're not natty anymore. So I lost that right in my 20s. I lost the right in my 20s to claim natty. Even if I wasn't on TRT right now, and I was at a low normal range, even slightly low testosterone walking around, I still don't think it would be reasonable for me to say, hey guys, I'm natural. I'm natural. Because that's not, guys. It's lifetime natty, or you're either lifetime natty or you've been enhanced. Okay, it is that simple, and that's the philosophy I hold. That's the standard I hold, and I should be held to that same standard, right? I should be held to that same standard. My previous gear use does give me a potential permanent advantage that could, in theory, last for a lifetime, right? I'm always going to have a potential because of that old muscle memory and things like higher muscle nuclei density to have a little more lean mass than other guys of my age and my stature and everything else. I'm just going to have an advantage of being able to have a few pounds more muscle than them no matter what else is going on. It just gives me a permanent advantage. That's due to the old muscle memory and things involved. So that's part of it. That's absolutely part of it. Now, did I experiment with a little bit of research stuff a while back? Yes. Yeah, did I try to mess with some SARMs? Yeah, I didn't find them to be effective. I'll be transparent in that I did mess with them. Did I mess with MK677? Also, within the last year, yeah. I actually think it has reasonable effects in my spider monkey fish frog, but I also found that it caused bloating and it caused increased appetite. And when I decided quite some time back, obviously, that I needed to trim down body weight, that had to go away. And I think because of that and because of my experience with that, I'm going to say for me, if I'm never going to bulk again, I would probably not even use that again. And you guys can do your own research on what that stuff is. You can decide for yourself how potent it is. Some people think it's amazing. Other people think it's almost as good as gear. Other people think it's virtually worthless who've tried it. So, again, that's subject to a lot of debate. Do I think it helps? Yeah, I think it does. I think it gives an advantage. I think it does. And I think particularly things like connective tissue and stuff, yeah. So, I mean, that has been in there. Am I on any of that these days? No. Since I've been cutting, I've realized stuff like that can't be there. I need to stay even in the normal testosterone range. Some people are like, well, you could bump your stuff up to cut. I could. But for me, I have a lot of appetite problems. And for me, if I start going on a bunch of stuff, it makes me hungrier. That's not conducive to cutting. That's not going to work for me. It's not going to be a viable option if I want to continue to bring my body fat and my scale weight down. So I've actually been cutting this whole time since I was in the 250s. I'm down at 219 now. I'm promising 205 by the end of the year, and then we'll see from there. I'm going to do that in the normal testosterone range. I'm not going to use research chemicals. I'm not going to use any of that because I feel like I'm just going to use diet and my training to get there. And I don't want anything that's going to mess with bloating, with water weight, with my appetite. Those are variables that I can't control for, and it's just my experience. A lot of those things for me personally, they increase my appetite, and if I don't want to be fat, that's not an option. And people need to remember that these things don't all affect every person differently. A lot of this stuff will make a lot of people overeat. A lot of this stuff will make a lot of people get more bloated. everything else. And so that's something for people to think about. That's not an option for everyone who's trying to cut. Everyone's got this idea, well, if guys go on a bunch of substances, they're just going to be able to lose a bunch of fat easier. Well, if they don't have a lot of appetite, that works amazing. You're right, it does. Guys who are overeaters, a lot of these things stimulate hunger. And so you end up just overeating when you're trying to cut. Well, that's not conducive either. And I would be one of those guys. I would fall in that category, and I do fall in that category. So no, I mean, I'm sticking things out on just my therapeutic amount of stuff, not throwing other stuff in the mix. I'm just leaving it be. But by that same token, do I claim natty? No, because I have previously been enhanced. I am on therapeutic TRT. So I think those two things right there would disqualify me from being natural. I'm also not selling anyone products, right? I'm not selling any supplements or anything else and saying, hey guys, these supplements are what helped me, say, lose this body fat. These supplements are what got my squat up to 485 or that 575 deadlift you guys saw me pull. I'm not going and blaming supplements for any of that. All right, I'm not selling you guys products based upon the results that I got on some supplement. So it is definitely different from me calling people out for scamming you. But by that same token, I'm also being very transparent about all that stuff. You know, I'm being transparent about that so that there is no doubt about it. Some guys might get up there and say, hey man, I've been doing your program. I've been training the way you train. I'm not quite at your size and strength. I've been doing it and you know, what's going on? Well, you know, other factors at play, particularly if it's a guy my age and your testosterone level is 50% of mine. That could be a factor. You didn't use any stuff when you were younger. I'm probably going to be able to have 5 or 10 pounds more muscle on my frame as a result of that. You know, even if you trained years ago and have some muscle memory and other stuff, if you did it all lifetime natural, that's going to matter. That does matter. And I'm honest about that, and hopefully people respect that. And if they don't, that's okay. There are some people who are going to say, well, because you have previously used stuff, you have no experience or advice to give other people, and I don't want to listen to you. And you know what? And if you choose to take that stance, and that's your stance, you have a right to that stance. You know what? You have a right to ignore the advice of anyone that you want to if you think that you have a good reason to do so. And your rational mind tells you that you shouldn't take their advice for a good reason, then, I mean, do what you got to do. You know, that's totally fair, and I'm not going to be offended by that. I'm not going to be offended by that if that's the reason someone doesn't want to take my advice. Now, if they have some other silly-ass reason, because some channel said something bad about you, well, okay, that's fine. But that doesn't mean my advice isn't good. But if you want to take that as the other reason and say that what I am telling you couldn't possibly work for you because you think everything I'm talking about is anecdote in myself, which it's not, that's okay. I accept that, and I'm not going to get angry at a person because of that. They have a right to that opinion, right? They have a right to that opinion. But, I mean, the reality is it's absolutely isn't the same thing as what I'm calling other people out for here. Totally different animal. Totally different animal. Because a lot of these guys are currently blasting. A lot of these guys are not only currently blasting, they're trying to claim that supplements that they are selling you are giving them the results, when in reality it's drugs that they're on that are giving them the results. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.